So something I've seen a lot of women in relationships say, and I've had this problem as well, you'll be in a relationship with a guy, and it will seem to be, to have its good moments, but then there will be times when he will be playing a lot of video games, or even some other activity, and it will feel very much as though he is so engrossed in that activity that he completely ignores you. And, I've heard it happening the other way around too. That the woman is the gamer and the guy is left feeling ignored in favor of these video games. And, for the partner who isn't as into gaming, or isn't being included in the gaming, they can be left feeling excluded and hurt and frustrated. And, online you'll find that when you look for advice on how to handle these situations, when you are that partner feeling hurt and ignored, the advice is not good. The advice you're given tends to be, oh, well, if your partner is ignoring you in favor of video games, you should just leave them, They're obviously undervaluing you, and, without taking the time to point out that actually it's very normal and healthy for people in relationships to have separate activities that they do recreationally. And yes, it's good if you can sometimes do those activities together, but you might not always be able to do them together. And really, if you're both healthy, developed adults, you shouldn't need to do everything together. It should be okay to have some activities apart, and so that you can come back together and have stories to tell each other. And, so there's that. Not enough people are told this. But also, it can be very hard to find the gamer's side of the story. The person who leaves you feeling ghosted or left holding the bag. And it turns out that the gamers sometimes feel unloved too. This was something that was very surprising for me to learn. When I did finally hear their side, that sometimes the gamers, if you say to them, I want you to game less and spend more time with me, they interpret that as an unloving act, and actually sometimes have hurt feelings over it because they feel like you're trying to take away something that is giving them pleasure in their life. And again, this is a piece of advice that is offered, that you don't want to fight your partner on their recreational pursuits too hard, because they will come to see you as a chore that they have to deal with instead of something enjoyable, which will just make them want to game more in order to burn off more of the tension. And there is truth in that. Some people find that they really do need the recreational activity of gaming in order to burn off emotional tension so that they can function better within their relationships. And, for some of them, gaming is a very important conduit for maintaining their friendships and other relationships. And again, if you are in a healthy relationship, and if you're both mentally and emotionally healthy, it should be okay for you to have separate friendships. It should be okay. And, so if your partner is wanting to continue to game, even though, you've told them that the amount of time they spend gaming is hurting your feelings, you shouldn't feel slighted by this. You should seek to feel, okay, to what extent can I compromise on this? And if you are being left feeling neglected by your partner, rightly or wrongly, I think it's a good idea for you to look for activities that you can do to help you burn off emotional tension. Because sometimes in relationships we do become overly reliant on our partners to offer us emotional support and venting, when really we shouldn't be making our partners responsible for our mental well-being. We should be largely taking responsibility for that ourselves and looking for ways to keep ourselves healthy and feeling fulfilled without hanging all of our health upon someone else. But, one of the things I'll say because I feel like, you know, ideally, at least some of the time, you should be spending time together within a relationship. You're not wrong to want that quality time, but also, you know, there's a big mistake I see gamers making when their partners say to them, "Oh, look, you know, you're gaming to this extent, and I'm feeling neglected. My feelings are hurt." The gamer does not take it well. Typically, the gamer tends to either dig in their heels and game harder, or they tend to get angry at their partner for even talking about it or questioning it, and you know, these responses aren't helpful. If your partner is feeling unloved by you, you know, regardless of the cause, it should be safe for them to tell you that this is how they feel. And when they tell you that they're not feeling loved, or that they're wanting to understand why this gaming is so important to you, it should be okay for them to ask these sorts of questions and to have you answer them, because you are in a relationship, you are relating to each other. Therefore, you know, in order to continue the relationship, there does need to be some understanding, some communication. And ideally, like, if I look back over my own relationships, and you know, relationship counselors will support this. The relationships I had that were the healthiest were ones where the lines of communication were open, where we felt free to tell each other how we really felt about something, and we felt free to tell each other what was important to us. And, you know, the best, I would say, of the relationships I had, the most fulfilling one I had was one where the guy would actually regularly say to me, "Is your love tank full? Do you feel, do you feel loved by me? Are you sufficiently loved by me?" And, you know, I would be honest with him about how I felt, you know, whether I was feeling well loved or whether I was feeling ignored and hurt, or whether, you know, I could give him an honest answer, and he would say, "Well, okay, what can I do about this?" And, you know, we'd be able to have these productive conversations about, you know, how can we better serve each other and help each other to feel loved. And, you know, I think in some ways maybe we were overly reliant on each other, but I think the fact that we had those conversations helped the relationship to survive for much longer than it otherwise would have, because in many ways it was an unhealthy relationship, but that I think was one of the healthy aspects of it. It was something that we had both read about in a book on relationships called The Five Love Languages, which teaches the idea of the love tank. And, you know, so we were able, I think, to stay together for much longer than we otherwise would have. And we were able to do a lot more good for each other because we had those open lines of communication about what our emotional needs really were. And you know, regardless of whether you're a gamer or not, I think this is a good life skill for you to develop. Contrast this with a guy who I went on a date with the year before last, and I was really, really into him, and he was really, really into gaming. And, you know, he did this bizarre thing where he agreed to go on a date with me. He held my hand for hours, but he also basically told me that when given the choice between having a relationship with me and being a gamer, he was always going to choose being a gamer and staying up all night to talk to people in other countries. And this left me feeling very hurt. And I did try to talk to him about it multiple times. I tried to reason and say, okay, this gaming must be really important to you. And when I said this to him, he said, no. And so I was left to think, okay, so even when given the choice between something you don't value at all and yet spend a massive amount of time with, and me, who you spent a fair number of hours with, you know, I'm even less important to you than that, really? You know? my feelings were very hurt. And, you know, I tried to say to him, well, you know, are you gaming this much because you're not finding your life fulfilling? And, you know, meaning to suggest that maybe if it's just that he's not finding life fulfilling, that maybe if he had a relationship with me, he would be more fulfilled. But as soon as I tried to go anywhere near that concept, he became angry. So angry that I didn't feel I could well, he didn't directly express the anger. I just saw the anger very quickly come across his face. Much more quickly than I think it ought to have done, really. Because basically, if you're going to agree to date a woman and then on the date tell her that you'd rather be gaming than dating her, and then proceed to spend a significant number of hours holding her hand, I think it's natural for her to have questions. I think it's natural to ask those questions, and I think it should be safe to ask those questions. You know, if you are involving yourself with somebody in such a way where they will become emotionally invested in you, and then you're telling them that they don't matter, that's just the wrong thing to do to someone. You know, if you are unwilling to not minister to a person, but at the very least take their feelings into account, I don't think you should be involving yourself in their life. I think you should just stay away from them, really. And, you know, similarly, if you are in a relationship with someone, even if their reasons for feeling neglected by you are silly, it should still be safe for them to at least tell you what they're feeling and to have you reassure them that no, they do actually matter to you. They should be able to say that to you without you becoming angry. And it is okay to say it. It is okay to tell your partner that they matter. And it is okay, people get angry sometimes at this idea that you should have to tell your partner that you love them on a regular basis, because they think, well, I've said it once, or I've shown it in my actions, why would it have changed now and the next day? But if life were really that simple, that no one would ever divorce, no one would ever break up. The reality is that we live in a world where people can fall in love and then fall out of love, and unless you communicate, your partner won't even know why it happened or that it's happening. You have to be able to talk it out, or they won't even understand what's happened to them, and it can be very traumatic. Honestly, because I never got an explanation on why this guy made that series of choices with me, I was honestly so traumatized by the experience that I really struggle to take the idea of, even being in a relationship with someone seriously anymore. And when I say that, what I mean is that I have lost all faith in the concept of monogamy or marriage, or it just, you know what I mean? It would be wrong for me to toll it up entirely to that experience. There's a number of other negative experiences I had that sort of accumulated to create the sensation, but I would say of the experiences, it was amongst the most traumatic. Simply because the desire to be cared about is not wrong. However, being cared about will naturally mean different things to different people. And you will need to sometimes have these conversations about how you define being cared about. Because if you can't tell this to your partner, they cannot meet any of your emotional needs. That's just fundamental. And you can't live in the assumption that your partner doesn't care. If they didn't care, they wouldn't be in a relationship with you in the first place. And if it's the case that they're just with you for some bizarre abstract reason, and they really don't care, then you shouldn't be with them anyway.